Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics and Brexit again. Third Brexit video in a row. Can't remember the last time that happened, although it won't be four in a row. But third, that has been a while. And in this video, I'd like to discuss a series of tweets from an actual EU negotiator explaining why brainless goats like David Davis, who think the EU will suddenly crack and cave into our demands at the end of 2020, are going to be in for a massive shock. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So before we deconstruct the nonsense, let's explain what the nonsense is first of all. This is what some Brexiteers think is the situation. So you have the UK and the EU on opposite sides of the negotiating table, and as with any negotiations, both sides want the best deal for themselves. Correct on both counts, no problem there. As a result, they think that both sides will simply stick to their red lines all the way until time is up to the 11th hour, and then it's a case of who blinks first. In fact, this is the language they are using, and whoever blinks first will concede the most. And this is where the thinking is badly wrong. And this isn't about, oh, because the EU won't blink or the EU are stronger than us. You don't even have to bring those arguments into it. It's because this isn't a negotiation between two people staring off at each other across a table. It's not even between two people. You know, as Ignacio Berquero notes, sorry if I've got that pronounced wrong, Michel Barnier is conducting negotiations on behalf of the EU Parliament, as well as the heads of 27 national governments, who themselves are answerable to their own 27 parliaments. Maybe not Hungary. Now, in order to pass a deal, 28 parliaments must approve it, 27 national ones plus the European Parliament. So Barnier has his instructions. They've already discussed it amongst themselves in what they want, and they've had their disagreements already. So what those 28 parliaments are likely to approve is what has determined his negotiating position. Barnier doesn't really have much leeway there. In fact, to concede anything, we would need Michel Barnier to act on our behalf in selling those ideas to 27 different countries, as well as the hundreds of MEPs that would be needed to gain a majority to approve it in the EU Parliament. At which point, you can start to see why brinksmanship doesn't work. Because at what point do the Brexiteers think the EU will crack? At what point this year? We're already halfway through it. We have 6 months left. The EU spent the 4 years that we wasted deciding what they wanted from an EU-UK deal. They've already worked that out. They've had those discussions. To fundamentally change their minds on it in 6 months is laughable. There is only one side that can actually change its position fairly easily, and that's the UK. Simply not possible for the EU. Not physically possible, even if you would suppose that it would want to. And this guy noted that during the negotiations between the EU and Korea, for example, the last 3 months were spent on solving a few sensitive issues. The major agreements were already in place. The deal was done. There were just a few tiny little details to be dealt with. Now, that is what we were told at the beginning of the year, remember. In fact, at the end of last year, when Boris Johnson said, we've got our oven-ready deal, we just need to sort out the details. But that's not how it's transpired, because Boris Johnson has not gone ahead with his proposal at all. In fact, he's tried to rein back on it. And the other thing is, as well, this guy, he also says that, he understands, or, he explained that there is a desire on governments, of course, not to agree to a change until very late on. He notes that people essentially prefer the status quo. And changing it means having to give something that is bound to upset a lot of people. Because all of these other countries as well have their own politics to consider. They all have their own oppositions who will not take kindly to making any concession that could be seen to be damaging to that country. That is the nature of negotiation. And when you talk about negotiating with the EU, so many stakeholders in there. But if you leave all of these issues until the last minute, because that's what we're doing, we haven't agreed anything yet. If you leave all of these issues until the last minute, you can't possibly get agreement, because there isn't time to go through all of these parliaments, all of these governments. But for me, the key point really is just the sheer number of stakeholders. You know, where Brexiteers go wrong is that they think of the EU as a single entity, as if it's a person. You know, they spent so long being fed the narrative of there being the UK within the EU, as if we were just like a block. And then there was the EU, which was this mass, as if it was just two people. They've become blinded to this reality of how the EU is going to work fundamentally. 28 parliaments, that's what this comes down to. 28. Frankly, if the government were to propose a realistic deal today that had a number of significant differences, but, you know, was realistic, it's doubtful you'd get around all 28 stakeholders and persuade them by the end of the year. I mean, in 6 months. You know, remember what was said. It took 3 months to organise little details, tiny little details with the Korea deal. You know, so doing it in November, actually waiting, because at the moment they're still in let's wait mode, they're still in brinkmanship mode. So when they decide this is the point of no return, massively miscalculated, of course. I mean, let's say it's November, it might even be December. I mean, no chance. Remember that the only way Boris Johnson got his withdrawal agreement, because you may think to yourself, yeah, but he got his withdrawal agreement agreed very late on as well. Last autumn, yes, he did. But it was us that did all the conceding there. The EU conceded nothing. Look at what he did to change it. So first of all, he gave us the headache of dealing with Irish customs checks. You know, the issue, the getting rid of the backstop was by saying, well, I'll tell you what, we'll put a customs border inside the United Kingdom. Well, that's what the EU proposed years ago. So of course they were going to go, yeah, okay then. I didn't think you wanted that. Putting a customs border inside your own country, but yeah, sure, no problem. And then the other thing he did was to surrender our stake in the European Central Bank. Billions of pounds that we were going to get that back after Brexit. But Boris Johnson said, you know what, keep it. So we conceded in order to get that withdrawal agreement done so quickly. So if Boris Johnson plans to do the same, in other words, just give the EU whatever they want, well, fine. He will essentially be just agreeing to the deal that's already on the table from them. But of course, the ERG crew in his parliamentary party will never go for it. Remember, the only reason they went for the withdrawal agreement, which they've now gone public with, was because Boris Johnson told them that he would break all of the promises that he gave to the EU. So they're not going to let him sign up to a much more rigorous treaty. So that's not on the table either. Anyway, so essentially it comes down to this. So if you think about Conservative MPs, because they're the only ones who have any influence in this country now. So some Conservative MPs seem to be genuinely looking forward to a no-deal Brexit at the end of the year. No idea how they think it's going to fly in the long term, but perhaps they don't care. And then you've also got some who do want a deal and genuinely seem to be of the opinion that brinksmanship is the way to get it. So it's that last group really. How many are in that last group? And how will they behave when it fails? And that is the question that we are constantly going to be coming back to this year, because ultimately that is what's going to actually determine what happens on January the 1st, 2021, notwithstanding anything we may agree with the US in between. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.